All right. So I started the recording at October 29th, 2024. This is the WolfPack Connect training on events. This is the first of a series of trainings on how to do certain things with managing your club and how to be successful at it and using different examples and kind of going in more depth with the advanced nature of some of these settings. So I'm going to share my screen at any time. I know that some individuals may pop into this um, uh, meeting, and that's fine. If this is going to be kind of a curated, specific, driven type of training. So ask questions as you have them. That's perfectly okay. Um, if if there are people who do show up into this meeting, if not, we're just going to go as is, and it's going to be recorded so that there can be um, a record for completing some of the incentive training requirements for later on. So with that said, let me just kind of open up some of my stuff here. I'm going to bring over my screen. I'm going to go into Wolfpack Connect, and it should log me in right away because I was just logged in. And one other thing I guess I will say is in the event that someone does pop in, I will try to keep my other monitor screen open and viewable so that I can see if there are questions at any time. But all right, back to it. What we're going to talk about today is events, right? So how to create events and then kind of go into a little bit more details about some of the settings and then more about specifically creating event templates so that you can have something that can make it very fast and easy to be able to just set up an event and then just run with it, right? So we're going to use the test group club, which is a group that I created for doing testing like this. And any officer that everyone should be an officer who's attending these trainings will have a very similar screen, which is your main dashboard. This is going to have all of your colored tiles. And as you can see, the dynamic with the recently events is our first one here as I've just recently opened up events with one of these last six tiles. So I'm going to click on events. You can also click onto your you can on your left hand pane on the side, you can always click on that too. But right now, as you can see in here, we have no events right now, right? We have looking at this left hand side pane, you can see that we had 9 events previously. And then there was nothing really else listed here, right? So we're gonna go ahead and just go ahead and create a basic, just run-of-the-mill event, right? Um, it I want to show you how easy it is to create this and so that you can see and feel comfortable with, oh, there was not really much here to it. And then we're going to kind of build and expand off of it, right? So when we go hit create event, you should really only be seeing just a blank event template. You won't be seeing any of these things, but I will show you by the end of this training how to have some similar things to this, right? So we're going to create that blank event template, and then it's going to immediately open this up to the next screen where we can start creating our event. So just recently, I've updated and put a few things to kind of remember and check on, right? And I thought that these would definitely be helpful. And so I'll kind of be explaining these things, but always check this thing. I think it's just very good to have this available and to keep these things in mind. So obviously the things that are on asterisk marks, we have to be making sure that we're filling in. So we're going to go ahead and just name this test event, right? Something very basic. Description. This is a test event. Oops, sorry. That was of all times. This is a test event, right? Event type. So this is important because this is really going to classify our event so that if someone was looking in this actual events up here and they were trying to find events based on something, they could actually categorize and filter it down, right? So we have a lot of different options here. And hi, Amy. We're just kind of going through the training here. And so we have a lot of different event type options here. We don't use all of them as much as we would like to, but that's okay. Some of the basic ones that like tabling, things like dinner galas. We've used a couple ceremony ones, but workshops, that's going to be a very big one. Social events, right? So just for this, we're just going to make this a social event, right? And now the event tags themselves kind of go into a little bit more of a deeper sense of filtering out. So we filtered this out already as the event type being it's a social event. Now, what else socially uh, can we put on top of that? So, for example, where is this going to be, right? So, if let's say it's at Truex campus. So it's a social event on the Truex campus. Or does this have free food, or is it friendly? So the more that you're able to find things that you can link these with, the more you're able to actually get a student who is maybe not heard of this event or who are prospectively looking for something to do, they might be able to connect themselves closer to it, right? So again, the more that you're able to find something as a leadership or what have you, as external event. If it was, we just had it in an event that was off at a pumpkin patch, Schuster's Farm, that would have had that external event tag. But so the more events. So I'm just putting some random things on here right now. All right. And now we're going to kind of go down. And as you can see here, I do want to make this very clear. There is a lot of things here, but one of the big aspects is everything is kind of labeled with a number, right? So one is a what, right? And then that also kind of links into our organizing team. But you can start to see like when, where, all of this stuff. So that yeah, there's a lot of things, but you can quickly go and able to find it. Like six is registration, I believe, right? So we are at a one with a what. We're now going down to the organizing team aspect. So if this was all right now, as you can see, the event coordinator, this has me listed down, but you could have a few different options of this. It could be a single person as the event coordinator, myself. It could be a custom host. So, for example, if I wanted to put down, say, this is the test group club. So if I want to put down test group club, and then if I had an email address, if your club has an email address, I could put, CG at MadisonCollege.edu. And then in that aspect, it would say the event coordinators, the test group club, and this is their contact information. And so if a student or somebody, a guest or somebody needed to contact the coordinators or the team members of this event, that is where it would go, right? So if you identify it with a custom host, which can be very cool because again, this is your club doing it, you can specify directly where you want the questions to go. Or if you wanted to, you could actually have a list of members, right? So for this, we can specifically say, hey, I want myself, right, to be, and I'm going to use my staff. I'm also going to use my student one I use for testing. So I can put those down there. And as I put those down, you can see kind of underneath team members here, that's kind of grayed out that it's slowly adding them in. So I could even put down Ellie, who's another, Kodiak, who's also somebody else, that's a part of the ELT team right here. And so Kodiak, and as you can see, they're just building up so that when, if I wasn't specifying directly me as the contact, any one of these team members could receive some sort of alert or some sort of notification or information, right? So, and then, yeah, we only the event coordinator or officers of the host group and as team members can manage this event. Well, if you have this co-hosted, which we do have some bigger events that are have multiple, like we had the intercultural fall social that had multiple identity-based groups. That would be one where you could have this decide to have this checked or not and say that hey only I think it was the intercultural exchange themselves as the department who was the host of the main event, and only they can make changes and modify it. or you can set up so yeah, you can have different teams with the co-host, right? And so that means different groups can also have access to be able to make changes and say check people into the event and whatnot. So there was that as well. Then we look down to how do you want your attendees to contact you? Right now, truthfully, we've really only been using the starter group chat with the organizing team, but this could be set up as an email. What that would look like is just basically a chat coming message coming in that says, "Hey, so and so," and then it would have all of these team members in here, right? And then it would ask the question. It would have a campus group bot, and that would kind of be the intermediary like person or like entity that would kind of be helping to make sure that one side of the message is being seen by the person, the people that need the question asked from, and then to going to who they're actually asking that question to. And so that, there's some sort of like making sure that the issue is getting resolved. There was also this other feature that is create activity stream. Now, this feature is cool. It hasn't really been played around nearly at all almost, but I can tell you that this is going to again have that campus groups bot in there. But just every time something happens, any change, somebody registers to the event or somebody makes a comment on the event page itself or any little thing, it will actually continue to build on this activity stream that would be found in the chat, and it can get very long and very big. And so the reason why it hasn't really been played around with a lot is because how big it can get. But yeah, I guess it would be something that if there was a need, that could be a built-on feature that a group could use. So again, the organizing team, it really just depends on who you want to be the main contact, where do you want it to go, who do you want to also be as backup contacts, and how do you want that information to get to you and your team if there are questions, right? So that's now we're going to jump right into the number two spot, right? Which is when. When is this going to happen? So, in a basic, just easy sense, we're going to have a start, an end, date, and then our time, right? So we can say today at 2 o'clock, right? To 3 o'clock. Now, if we wanted to build up on this, and again, I always want to also make sure that we're making sure that we have the time zone selected correctly. It should always link us to the central time zone, but in the event that it doesn't, it's always good to check because yes, this can screw up the ability for your attendees to check in or to register. And it can be very hard to make sure that you're actually getting accurate information logged when you're creating your event. So just always double check to make sure that central time is checked for the time zone. But if we wanted to kind of go into if we knew like this was, say, for example, not a social event, say this was a member meeting, like clubs have general membership meetings where they discuss like maybe what they're going to be doing with their club or a mission, and they're giving progress updates to the other members or whatnot. They might want to be having, say, every Tuesday we're going to be having this meeting at 2 o'clock. They can set up the recurring event settings similar to how they would maybe in Outlook, but just a little bit different. So as we click on that recurring event settings, we're going to see that it kind of drops a few things down here. It's going to drop basically an entire map, an entire calendar list that goes a year out, right? And it's going to X out the specific days that we currently are in. And so that you can't backtrack and do a previous thing and say like, hey, it starts on the 28th. No, that it wouldn't allow you to do that. But so you could say if it was going to be on every Tuesday, you could then say, I'm going to select this on Tuesday. And then you would have to go and select this on Tuesdays of every date for as far out as you wanted to go along. So that is another thing that then you could do. This has been very useful. Some clubs maybe don't have an exact date. They kind of do it, by when they are able to contact their membership and say, hey, do you want to get together and when's your availability? And so they put together an impromptu meeting. And so, which is fine. And some who know and have a set schedule set out, they can easily set this up. And this is, I can say, like Vet Club, for example, has used this a lot, with just being able to set their meetings up and then boom, they've got, I think every Friday at 10 o'clock, they always have their meeting. It's very fast and very easy for them to set this up and to be done with it, right? So, reoccurring event settings are awesome in that sense. So, I just wanted to just kind of show that as well, because that is going to be a very useful feature if you're doing that. I'm going to uncheck these quickly so that we can kind of put this back, just so we have it for today. And so now that we've got the when, the number two out of the way, we're going to go down to number three, which is our where. And this is now going to talk about how and where this exact event is going to be taking place. So if this is just going to be on campus, sweet, we can list that as just on campus. I always like to make sure, hey, we're putting a location name, we're being as specific as possible in that sense, right? If off campus, again, location name. Online, now that's obviously, as you can see, that takes that away. And that's where number three, and then this next part under meeting is really going to take place. But what if you have a hybrid event? Like this is an event that would have been utilized specifically for this means, right? So I had in this meeting today, this was an online event, but our next one on emails is going to be set as an in-person, but it's also going to be online. So how you would do that, so it would display up correctly, is you can go ahead and you make sure you're doing it on campus. I think if I remember correctly, it's going to be in C2455 on the Truex campus. You can always put that to be determined on there, and you can also be very specific. I mean, if this was, say, going to be a going out to an external off-campus event, this is when you would definitely want that information listed. Excuse me, and yeah, and even down to that longitude, longitude, right? And but if I'm going to kind of jump past this, who can see this event location? Because if I'm going to do this as a hybrid event, I'm going to set up the on campus and have that selected, the location name, and then I'm going to also go down and also then be selecting and putting down, pasting in the meeting link. So this was a Teams meeting, and the one that's going to be emails as well as this one, but I would paste the Teams meeting link in here as well as identify it as a Teams meeting. And then when it shows up for this hybrid meeting, it would not only show up as it being on campus at C2455, but it'll also show up and have the actual Teams link that you could click on and go to. So that's how you do it if you were to do it as a hybrid. And that I have found has been somewhat of a misleading thing for some users, because they think they only have one option, either being on campus or at a specific location, or online, but it doesn't really intuitively kind of allow that idea that, hey, you could actually select both without kind of playing around with it. So I'm making that very clear that you can actually do that, and it works really well in that sense. The one thing that you'd have to make sure you do, though, is to know what that meeting link is. So when creating this event and for the one for next month, I made sure to have that information either pre-done, so I've already picked out my date and then created my event in Teams. And so that when I'm in this page and looking at it, I can immediately just go over to Teams, copy the meeting link information and paste it into the meeting link box here. Or I'm just make a little note, because honestly, I'm forgetful in those aspects sometimes. And there's a lot of, like I've kind of pointed out, there's a lot going on here, right? You want to make sure that you're getting everything down, and so making sure that you kind of at least allow yourself to have some sort of flow when you're working with these events can be very helpful in being efficient with it, right? So just make sure, yeah, you either kind of know and have ahead of time that meeting link information, or because, yeah, you don't have to use Teams. You could use Zoom or some of these other ones. But just as a reminder, though, Teams is the approved college technology services college wide approved meeting way of doing virtual meetings. We do WebExes as well, but as far as Google Meet, Zoom, GoToMeeting, or BlueJeans, those though may be secure or not the approved source that technology services has deemed in the information standard policy document. So just as a reminder there, but we're obviously not going to block or stop it. So, but kind of going back up here just to kind of finish up here. So who can see the event location, right? So we're going to see a lot of this stuff. Not just this is the first kind of mention of it, but as we kind of get down here to access and display and registration, we're going to see a lot more of this as well. A big thing with Wolfpack Connect is the ability to have specific privacy settings, and which I will also kind of relate them and make them intertransferable to saying access settings. So privacy slash access settings, right? So you can only see certain things if you have the ability to access them. So if we have this set to everyone, right, I can tell you right off the get-go that anyone, even people who do not have access to this platform, so we do have this set up so that we can look at these things. Actually, that wouldn't work. I would have to just kind of just for reference open up this incognito window and go to madisoncollege.edu and kind of go back a second because it's going to want to autofill. And so anyone who is not in the platform will have something that looks similar to this. When we go and click on Wolfpack Connect, we're going to be asked to log in, right? But we also have made it so if we have new students who have not currently registered yet for classes, but they're going to be registering next semester, they want to know what things can they get involved in, what activities or events, or even just basic community members, right? We want to make sure that they can have some access depending on what it is. So we make sure that these things are accessible to look for anyone, and you don't have to be logged into the platform just to view what's going on today, right? So as you're seeing, when we have that everyone option checked, that is going to allow for everybody, and think about it as the external website right here, they're going to be able to see this. So most times, with that said, most times only display to the location to logged on users. If this is a specific event that is only for students, right? It would make sense that as only students and club advisors are in the platform, those club advisors were added by me, and then it's an automated process with students. So, but if you're logged in, you'd either be from one of those two categories, the student or the club advisor. So only display the location to logged on users, right? So they could then be able to see it if they were to go to their homepage or Wolfpack Connect and look at upcoming events. And therefore, there would be allowed some sort of privacy or access privacy, right? And then only display the location to users who are registered. Now, this could be a one that could be an incentive, right? If I was to look at it like that, right? So maybe you want this to have some sort of layer of I want you to be able to look at it only if you've registered to the event, which is a unique way of getting members to register to an event. You can't always say that they'll go once they register, but you can at least maybe make that a little bit more of an incentive. Like I will show you the location once you register to the event. And maybe there could be other ones, reasons why, but that's what I've at least identified as a good, the best way as to why that would be selected. But mostly by default, only display the location of logged on users is the option that we usually have selected, and then display this map on the registration page. And that will look basically just like a map, like a Google's map. I think that's an add-on, honestly, that uses some of the Google Map technology to identify and show them information. So if you have this address section all filled out, right, they would utilize that right off the get-go. I personally don't like having that thing selected. It just adds this big map to the event and kind of makes it look a little bit less let's call it pretty for that lack of a better word, but it can be useful, especially if this is, I say, a orientation or a welcoming, a first time thing with a user. It can be very useful, right? So, and like I've already said with the meeting link about this information, if you didn't have an a platform, you could create a thing in here. That's something that we have not honestly tested. So I would be very hesitant. Again, as I said, Teams and WebEx are the only two real video platforms that the technology services has approved as being acceptable. But there is technically this option as well. But I really wanted to say the same thing. Who can see the main link? Who can see the event location? The same thing. Now, it might be easier if you have the event. Now, here's the thing. It could be easier in some aspects to have this only set up so that once they're registered, they have the location of the video link address. You don't want I don't remember what it was called, but back in 2020 with the pandemic, there was a thing where users would just drop in and basically bomb into a meeting, and then it could be disruptful. So if you know for a fact of who's coming and you have a roster of who's coming, then it might make sense to say, hey, at that point we want to include and give them the registration, the video link information, right? But until then, if they don't register, we will tell them that they can either come to us in person if we want it as a hybrid, or we just don't provide that information at all, right? So, yeah, so I've done this both ways. I mean, obviously, the everyone I've done as well, but mostly I can't really give you an option of what I would say as the preference here. Just recently, I have been doing only display the link to logged on users just to match this. Feel like it can be easier in case there is somebody who just does not have the same technology experience that I do, and they may feel a little bit like I don't see where I'm going or how I'm getting to it. I feel like from the experiences of testing, it's been a little bit easier for them to be able to find the link by having it match this. But again, both I've used and both seem to have been very useful. So I obviously am not going to have any sort of link here because this is, again, I'm just setting up a basic meeting event right here. And so then as we go down, we've now finished number 3 with the where. And now we go down into the photo and flyer, right? So now here we can choose a photo. Now, the big thing here to make sure this event photo is going to be the photo that's going to display on again. So this size right here is really what you're looking at. Is what that's going to really be showing. It's also going to be that same thing if you do log into the platform. So if I was to again go back into the platform and to the home page, and this thing that all these, that is what this event photo is referencing. So the 380 pixels high, so tall versus the 760 pixels wide is the right dimensions you're looking for when you're picking out an event photo. I have a one right here that I'm going to use for everything today, and so I'm just going to hit apply and hit save, and boom, that's going to pop that in there. Now the folder description, this is good for just putting down for ADA compliance, right? Because this allows screen readers to be able to, like say, use somebody who's blind or visually impaired. It can allow a screen reader to actually be able to kind of give context to what this is if they're unable to see it, right? I'm just gonna put down Wolfpack Connect event photo, right? And same thing with this upload a flyer. If we were to kind of go and try to maybe click on, I don't know if don't have per se, but here we go actually. This would be a great example of what we're looking at for this up the flyer aspect. So that is going to, it's always going to be this big. I've had a couple advisors ask about trying to see if they can reduce that size. Unfortunately, that is something that the platform limits the ability to do that, even with workarounds. So yeah, just prepare for that. But yeah, at the same time, it definitely allows you to be able to fit every bit of information on. There are going to be some differences when you look at the mobile version of this, of say something like this event flyer versus the web version, right? So it would look a little bit different, and it would allow probably, I think the reason why they kind of lock this in is because it is makes a little bit more of a compatibility sense with the mobile image to view it a little bit easier, right? So BPA is, for example, this general member meeting, right? This and as kind of as we were also talking about, they have the map on here and everything. And actually, I'll probably just keep this up as a good example of showing. So yeah, that's the other thing. I would say just a basic, think about a basic sheet of paper. So we were just talking about pixels, 8.5 by 11 inches. If you were in Canva or something like that and wanted to know, that would be a good flyer type of thing. Or if you want to do it even smaller, say like it was a quarter size sheet, like a 4 by 6 or something like that, like off 1/4 of an actual page of paper, right? So that's what number 4 is going to kind of talk to us about with the folio and flyer. And so now as we move down to the more details, so now we're kind of getting into a little bit more of the more advanced things here, right? So number 5, this just if there was a specific dress code, so or if there was something that you need to upload a document that said what to exactly wear or whatnot. Examples of why this would be useful is if like the National Society of Leadership and Success, NSLS, has an induction ceremony at the end of November every month and spring, but they have you're supposed to dress up for that, right? So that would be something where you would want to kind of make sure that your guests know or your students in this case would know that yeah, to look a little bit nice, right? Or what Student Senate has member meetings that business casual is kind of the look to go for. But if it's just basic, just casual jeans, okay. I've never tried. I would assume that because it does not have an asterisk mark next to it, that it's not something you technically have to fill in, but it's never been something where I've tried, and since it's such a one-click option, it's never been something that I've thought not to try. And I guess the biggest reason is because the next thing, food provided, is the next big option here, which if we're talking about things that will draw and attract students to an event, food's obviously going to be that number one thing here, right? So having that food provided kind of will really kind of help to specify, and you can say exactly where the food's going to be provided from. Excuse me. But yeah, food provided will make it very clear. And again, if we have one of those tags, if we go back the way back up here, does say free food, right? So the again, we're continuing to bring and identify things that are going to be useful. But yeah, so number 5 is just a quick, more details option with dress code and the food provided. So now we go down to 6, which is that access and display, kind of what I talked about, that privacy and display. So who is allowed to register? So there's got a lot of options here, and this is I would really venture to believe that this is probably the most complicated part of creating events for anybody. Sorry. And I would understand why, and I'll kind of walk you through some of the things to think about. And because at the end of the day, it is your decision on how you want to select as for who's allowed to register and then who is allowed to see the event, right? Because those are the big things here is who's allowed to register and who is allowed to see it. But again, everyone now in the easiest sense, everyone is very similar to what I had explained about with here as well, right? So if we're looking at the external website, Yeah, if you have it set to everyone, then everyone can be able to view it, right? Now that same logic still applies here. Obviously, though, if we're kind of going down the list here, yeah, if you we had just recently we had a thing with political candidates for the for Dane County, I believe, and we had it was a candidate forum, and so yeah, we could allow guests to be able to register to this event. They would not need to have a specific MadisonCollege.edu email address or a user account. They could just log right in as a guest, and it would allow them to be able to register, and that would be it. We've limited the access to anything else to them as guests. They cannot view the feed, they cannot view the homepage, they cannot view the user directory, cannot post on the feed, they cannot do anything but besides actually register to the event. It's an event itself that is listed as everyone can register, right? So everyone, a lot of people just choose everyone. Um, Another thing there to think about is Madison College WolfPack Connect users only. Again, this is only allowing students currently enrolled in the classes, that this is checked every day at 6:01 a.m. by our student information system, and cross references. If they're in a class, then they're in the platform. They have to be in a continuing education class that would not be allowed in. So they have to be in an active class that would be a degree credit, or I believe I think that there's some gateway classes. This is meant to expand on access, but as for right now, this is kind of how the logic has been set up when it was started over a year ago. And then club advisors again are anybody who I have let in, that have notified me or that I was notified when the club was being re-registered or started that they were a user. I would have made sure that they were logged in, they could log in, and that the single sign-on security settings that we have with Microsoft work with this. And that's why you would get asked to do that, use your authenticator app sometimes. That would be what this setting would be for, right? And as I'm talking about these things, it kind of does apply to some of these as well. This also will apply to anything else when we get into some of these later series about things like files and stuff. This same type of idea of privacy and access, the same options will also be listed for everything. So just keep that in the back of your mind is that, yeah, these things, they can seem very confusing, but once they're broken down and they're explained a little bit more, they make a lot more sense. So the next option is some mass and college users only. So we could specify who we wanted, right? And we could actually do this breaking it down as in, hey, we want, and then this is when it would actually use tagging with administrator tagging. So there was a sign on my end that would actually show this. So in this aspect right now, this has all the years to graduate. We're not using identifying that. So this is one we don't really use it as much right now. But again, we're going to build up on that as well. And then we go down to some Madison College tag users only. So this is when we can start to identify based on other things that are brought over in the student information systems. So with some of those being ethnicity, location based. I have some of these are for my purposes for knowing who is still in the platform or not, new students, stuff like that. And again, this is also online students. This is also going to be built up as well, right? So that is also an option right here. Group members only, right? So if say, and I don't know off the top of my head, but I think the task group club has a little over 100 members. If I selected group members only the 100 group members of the task group club could be allowed to register. Now, this could be a little bit tricky if you have this not set up right with who can see this event, right? Because if you have this set up to say everyone can see this event, but only group members can uh register to it, and then that makes it very hard. Where like you're going to be having a lot of questions probably set up into the organizing team here up here. There's probably going to be like, hey, I can't register to the event, but I can see it, right? And that you want to make sure that whatever you select, and that's why a lot everyone just usually picks everyone, because it kind of just links the two. But if you select group members only, yeah, you probably want group members only as well. Some group members only. This should do specific sub tags as well, and then you can specify those contacts. Tag members again. This is now taking. I have created a bunch of examples of just different colors. So blue, orange, brown, green. I could say, hey, if I have somebody in a blue, and a good example of using this is saying, hey, if I'm identifying in my club membership who are officers versus who are members, I could say I could say I want the officers who are blue in this instance to only be getting this, say this membership meeting. Let's say that we're gonna go back and create this as a membership meeting. Say this was only for officers. This is the leadership team making the decisions right now, and we wanted to have this set up as just a specific set of individuals from the group. We could say, hey, we want Team Blue, which in this instance would be all the officers. Or if we wanted only say you are trying to identify in a to-do list and you split your membership up into two teams or whatever, an A or B, and say A was Team Purple and B was Team Red, right? You could say select it as that. These sub tags are great tags to use. And you just have to make sure that, yeah, you have to set those up, which is something that we're going to be talking about in a later series as well. And then you can go even further into this. So I did east, south, west, and north. So you could even go even farther into that. Has not really been utilized as a need, but there was something that I hope to really expand on. We just have to find a reason for it, I guess. Because as you can see, we had these voting eligible and slash eligible. One of these things was one of the testing ideas was based off of elections. So say your club has elections every year at a certain time, and you want to maybe make sure that a specific eligible person who has met the qualifications in the club, so they can be able to vote based off of how many meetings they've attended consecutively, right? Maybe that could be an example. And so they need to be eligible. You just have to identify them as a subgroup of the member tag, right? So you can also have invited people only. That this is where you would actually select those members, and then you could have only, again, the officers, kind of like what I picked out when I was talking about up here with member tags. That was my only really good example, but there was many others, right? But you could say I want only the officers of this group. So that means I have, I think, 10 officers of the test group club. Only those 10 individuals could actually register to this event. And then we have a last one, which is the members with badges only. Something that I've played around with, but nobody has actually utilized badges. You could, I think Laraza's only one of a couple who has also played around with this, but you can basically create automated processes. So I think Laraza uses that if they've been to 5 meetings, they get a badge, and that badge then allows them to be able to be an active participant versus just a member of the club. So being an active participant versus a member of the club, I think allows them to get a little bit more access to have some sort of ability to have a vote in the system on certain things. Again, I kind of just giving a basic general idea. But yeah, so you can have that be an option, right? And so you'd have to say and select badges, right? So, and then, yeah, so those are kind of in the general sense and why it would make, as you can see now, why the everyone or Madison College WolfPack Connect users only kind of looks a little bit more appealing than all of these other ones. Some of them we have not set up yet or need to really be really built up on, and then some of them really require the club to build up on them themselves, and then once you've done that, then you can actually start to really have more flexibility and options, right? You can select, another thing is, um, if there are some if this user, this say student, is already registered to another event that's happening at the same time, this could prevent them from being able to register to the event. It would actually give them a notification that says, hey, just so you're aware, you've already registered to another event at this time. And then that way they can, the idea is they can accordingly decide to make the correct changes and allow themselves to be able to either cancel one or not go to the another one, right? And then who can see this event? So same thing. We kind of want this to match. Now this summarizes them a little bit differently. Everyone, as everyone logged on users only is basically the same thing as saying Wolfpack Connect users only. We do group members only. That's obviously group members only. Just the people who are allowed to register. Um, that is a very confusing one, and I really do not have an answer to that. You've stumped me on this one. I'll have to look into that one. And then no one. This will hide it from the calendar completely so that it doesn't show up on this slider at all, and it won't show up under events at all. So if you have a specific closed private meeting, right? Some clubs do have that. You may not want the public, and when I say public, I am talking to the public as in everyone, but I'm also talking about a student who wants to maybe get involved, who's a first time member, a first time potential member, new member. It does kind of limit your visibility for picking up new members, but if you want to make it so that only active participant members are able to do it, you could select as you could hide that, right? And then nobody could see that. And so now that we've kind of touched base on that six here, I want us to go down to talking about seven. So that is the same. Basically, we're now kind of talking about the same thing, but we're also kind of building up on this. So here's a couple different things to think about, right? So if we wanted this to be, if the registration, so we had selected, let's say we had selected everyone for these other two things, right? Everyone and everyone, right? All of this is selected. I would have to close out of all these things to kind of make this a little bit easier to see. Excuse me. We had just selected everyone and everyone, so anyone could see it, right? And we were to do a very similar thing to the pack event that just happened at Schuster's Farm, which Wolfpack Connect was being the entity that allowed students to be able to select and pick their ticket, but everything was held off site. So the event was off site, all the information was off site, and so it was basically going to an external event registration. We could select no, which would take that away, and then it would ask us to put in, so like Eventbrite, for example, is a good example of this. We have a first gen event that is happening on the 8th of November. This is where they would have put in no, and then they would put in the Eventbrite address. And then if they wanted to register to the event, it would immediately take them to Eventbrite from there so they can complete the registration information. And because the Eventbrite would be the entity which is holding and keeping count of the registrants. I'm probably not saying that 100% correctly, but you get the idea. They're the ones keeping track of it, so we don't need to be in Wolfpack Connect. Now, that may be good if you already have a system set up to do that. But it does obviously have some pros and cons. One of the biggest cons here is that on our side, right, it doesn't allow you would have to go to the external site to be able to see that information. Or if you're not even, say, Eventbrite, you don't have an account with Eventbrite, and say it's like a Schuster's Farm with Pack, where they don't have any control over any of it. We're just basically sending them over to the Schuster's Farm website to complete the registration. Then we don't even know how many technically people registered, and that can be problematic if you have to maybe use this information or this data for future events, right? And you want to be able to kind of build off and say, like, we had this many people last time. We want to build and reach for this goal. Well, now you don't really know if you're not able to have easy access to that information. It may not always be like that, but who knows? So with having it with us, you have that option, right? So right now, by default, all things we're going to say, if you select this to yes, we have just a regular RSVP. This can really be a lot of different things. You can actually change this, right? This just says RSVP just so that, because it's just the most basic and default. We could honestly change this. I want everyone to kind of think about in terms of member or, you know, user or whatever, right? So if we say just save this to member, right? We now say if only members are able to log and actually register to this event, then there would only be one member. We had the executive leadership team had a club advisor lunch just recently, and we had club advisors put down on their members. So they identified that only advisors are the ones that have access. We also made sure that only club advisors had access to be able to register to the event too, right? So if this was something that allowed guests, we could then say, let's add another option, right? And then you could say a guest, right? And then go down, save that. And yeah, I would have to put down a bunch of information here and hit save. But basically, when you're actually selecting and registering to the event, you have the option to select is this a member or a guest as well. And then you could actually select more than one thing. For the Schuster's Farm, for example, what we were able to do this year, which was kind of built off of going to the external site last year, is we actually were able to select two members. And the way why that was selected like that was because the advisor of PAC, the Programs and Activities Council, wanted the member and the guest to be combined as two. So they said, I want 100 tickets to be able to be sold. 50 of them are going to be for just students. 50 of them could be for a student and their guest, which comes out to 100, right, tickets. And once 100 tickets have been reached, that's our cap. And then there are no other options, right? That there are no other tickets available, right? So, and they chose to just put one RSVP and then put the double the amount. Or in this case, they could have said 50 and 50, right? I mean, it just really depends on how you want to do it, because you have options based off of answering questions when you register to the thing, like think health, food, or safety, or whatever. Like, are you allergic to certain things or whatnot? Like, you may have to, if you may have, say, I'm allergic to shellfish, and I'm answering, and it's only giving me two options to select and choose from, I kind of lose that second voice if, say, that other person is allergic to something. I just use that as one example. There could be many, but it could be very beneficial to be able to split this up, right? So that's something to think about. Now, if we were to kind of go back into this and kind of dive in here a little bit more and kind of play based off of this idea of the Schuster's Farm thing, we could say we could have we could identify a quantity available. Most times, unless if I would say unless if there was some reason why you would connect with me ahead of time so that I knew this price would always be zero. Donations would really be or this would always be set to no. But quantity available, I just keep in mind that if you leave this field empty, there will be unlimited capacity. So if there was only supposed to be 100 tickets, or in this case, 50 member tickets, right? So if we don't identify that 50 tickets are available, then there is not going to be any cap here and that anyone can continue to register, right? So allow a waiting list. You could set up a waiting list for this so that if you do hit a specific your cap and say somebody decides to un-RSVP, they could go back and then allow them to be able to then get notified that there is an available option. And that is one thing to kind of look at, right? So we don't utilize that much just because we haven't ever had anything that intricate that we needed to. But in this instance, though, right? So additional options. These can all really be left blank to a big extent but the more you understand this, the better it'll help you. If you have a minimum for order, right? We just leave this nothing, right? This is going to say that they can register at the least amount at zero, but max per order. Under member, they can only get one. So they can only get one ticket. And so this is the big difference here. We had set this to two tickets to allow for a member and a guest, or a student and a guest of a student with the Schuster's phone. But because we're identifying a separate difference between the members themselves being able to get 50 tickets at the cap, and that there can be no more than that, right? Each person can only get one ticket at a time. Then we want this to be set at one, and then we can go down and select sales date and the time and everything, or we don't, and it just basically follows upon when the registration opens up, which would be the next thing in this list that you're going to see. Now, this is all also part of the stuff where it talks about cancellation with the timeout and everything. We do not really utilize that, but it can be utilized if it's helpful for your event. But yeah, we can identify the deadline, and yes, we select that, then that will make it so that those options can be applied. But in the biggest takeaway I want everyone to get at is that yes, setting doing the math ahead of time, knowing what you really want to have as registration tickets, and then you can select these options about it does it allow them to be a member, and then knowing how many tickets are actually available. Sometimes you say, I don't want anyone to know that we have 50 tickets available, right? You can hide that information, and then you know obviously tax isn't going to be included, but it's just a default value. When we hit save here, this will obviously now show that we've got 50. And now if we were to do that same thing over here and then go and say quantity available 50, right? And then go down as max for order one, and then again go down, no save. Now we have 100 tickets, right? We have 100 tickets, 50 of them are for members, 50 of them are for guests. This is a really irrelevant if you want to be able to switch them around. It just is how it's going to show up on the thing. I don't really believe there's any cap to how many options you want to have. Obviously, you just need to have more tickets. Close event registration only really matters if you need to shut down the registration for any reason. Um, like when if you're getting close, would already cap off. If there was some issue where the math wasn't done correctly and you were getting more more event registrations than you wanted, you could come in here and shut it all down this way as the last option. But really, if you set the limits up right, we have an open date, from today till tomorrow, or let's just say the 31st, and just 1 a.m. to 1 a.m. At those days, the attendance limit, and you could say I want 100, right? Tickets limit. I want 100. There could be reasons why maybe the attendance limit might be different. Not for this scenario though, at least how I view it. Because if you're controlling this and you have 50 tickets on each side, you're at least hoping for the best outcome to be 100. Anybody else would just, you're not really measuring those metrics, and that data is not really being useful. And I mean, you're potentially paying for the ticket. I don't know. There could be reasons, but here's the tickets limit. This right here, the tickets limit will make this really not be a thing. So if you don't do the math correctly, you won't have to actually come in here and close event registration. It will cap it off, right? And so when I would create this event, right, and then save this, um, it would then preview it. It will now show, if I can just probably try to create the event as is right now and just preview it so that you can kind of get an idea. And remember, it started at 2 o'clock, right? So now if we were to register, as you can see, we have 50 spots left. You can only get one ticket of either one, right? And this is when the sales time ends, right? So obviously, if this event's happening today from 2 to 3, this wouldn't really make sense considering that you have 2 extra days to register to something that's already ended. But as you can see, note there was a limit of 100 tickets. Well, that's actually incorrect per person for this event. But that's a one lower setting. I must have not checked. But as you can see, though, the thing that I was trying to really get at is showing that you have identified and split up this correctly so that you can register to the event. And again, we haven't finished making the event, so that's probably the reason why. But if we go back now, I'm just gonna take us right back into the event itself. And and as you can see, it's 2 o'clock now, so the event is now live. If it was live, it should probably, if this is showing up, this might show up now. Maybe, hopefully not. Yep, it does actually showing up as a live event now happening within the feed. So anybody, and I believe if we have this set to everyone as well, if we were to refresh this might show up here as well. Yep, it's also showing up. But as you can see, it says private location. You have to sign in to display that, right? So, but as you can see though, we have anyone can view it because we had set to everyone. So having those view options are very helpful. So kind of just going back here and going back and editing this. And you can still edit event as it's going on. That's completely understandable and okay to do. But to kind of just summarize some of these things, right? So per attendee. So yeah, this is what that should be set at anything because per attendee. And so that's the difference here. That should really be set to 1. And that would fix that. So you couldn't identify if you're not attending. You could easily be able to say that, and that would send a notification to the officers of the club. Um, and then going down to this is all we're in the registration section. We still haven't gotten down to the number 8, the advanced, but to kind of summarize these things, right? A reminder. You can send a reminder depending on how many days out or no reminder at all. We look forward to see you. It's at this location, and then you can actually preview that, right? So this is then what it would show. We look forward to seeing you then, right? And then it would show you where your tickets are and all that. Yep, you have a great day, Amy. And then you could be able to view that. So, and then the next part here is that you could do your RSVP personalized email confirmation, which would be very similar. Your event registration was successful, right? So that's the same thing. It would as soon as you registered to your event, it would show a thing that says pops up and he says, "Hey, you get an email notification that says your event registration was successful." Or you could set to anything you want. You can also say don't set something up like that, right? Um, going down, display the list of attendees too. Um, Now this is awesome because this allows you to kind of have some idea of what you're looking at in terms of um, like displaying your options to like provide some sort of like if there was a premiere of something or a movie that you were that was going to be playing like an event or some social event, and you could have like I can't wait to see this movie, and this movie's been so exciting, and blah blah blah, and you could have some sort of like hyped up amount or something being displayed and being shown, and that could be displayed to the list of attendees and allow them to post comments about the while the event is happening and after, like, oh my gosh, that movie was so cool. I enjoyed this event so much. Thank you. Or there was this person who I met at the event. They had a blue shirt on or whatever. I wanted to be able to connect with them or whatever. Reach out to me if you have a blue shirt. There could be a few different reasons why you could allow for this, but this is very useful into allowing, in my opinion, hype. And that if you display this, you could display this to, it really would make sense to just logged on users only. But everyone, I guess, in the sense, if you had this open to the public. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to end at the right here before we go into advanced options. And I'm going to probably break this up into a second part series, um, about events part two, and probably in the next week or so, should there's a second option, and that we can then pick up on this and then build and expand, with showing the advanced options in more detail, but also then continuing to show you what it would look like if you were to then make an event template, and how we would go about doing that, because we're very close to it in some aspects, right? We just have to go through the rest of these options, because sometimes these options may be really relevant if you are going to have those in your event. But otherwise, if you had no other options, you could then go down to the last option here and say, I want to make this an event template for my specific group. And then you would have a template like I was showing at the very beginning of this training, and that would identify what you would do. So I'm just gonna kind of go back and at least finish out the number 7 here with the registration, and then we're gonna have a part 2 series on this. This being the first series, the first of the entire series, it would make sense that, making sure the events is a very long process compared to other ones, so it makes sense we may not fully get through all of it in one take. So, um, excuse me. So yeah, that's kind of where my plan is for the rest of this. Now moving on, and finishing up this, right? So, you can have a ticket cover that basically shows, it would show when you went and previewed, like it could have a little event image or whatever on this. And if you wanted to customize your ticket to that extent, the more the merrier. We love customization. Um, just make sure that you understand that it's only going to be 180 pixels tall and 980 pixels wide, rectangular. You know, Something to keep in mind is that that is going to be small, right? A lot smaller than the event image of 360 by, 380 by 760. So yeah, just keep in mind about that. Um, but yeah, if you can always do that and just use that, we can also just click on photo gallery and pick images or whatnot. We could even, boom, hit apply and look like this, right? So, we could pick a lot of things, but as you can see, that's very small image, right? So, and then the last thing on this before we wrap up with the advanced, before we wrap up with 7 under registration and the series for today at least, is the feedback request. So you can basically, say I want to send a feedback request 24 hours, or we can go all the way up to 2 days, right? I've been using at the end of the event. That makes it very, while it's still in everyone's mind, they just finished the event, it shoots it out right away. So if at the end of this training series today, the event that we just created, which will be different from the next time we start this, was to end at 3 o'clock today, right? So that said, that this feedback request would go out at the end of 3 o'clock, at 3 o'clock, and so it would be sent out as an email, right? So you to do that though, you need to, you can one identify if it was to anyone who registered, or to only the people who checked in. There's obviously a big difference between the two of those, right? Because people who registered to the event, those individuals, actually registered to it, but didn't actually potentially attend it, versus the ones who actually might have attended it and they might have done that by checking in. Now, there's always a potential possibility that they could have registered to the event, actually attended the event, but didn't check into the event. Um, that's always possible. Um, uh, it would be a lot harder to identify that if they didn't do something like QR code and be able to scan it in. Things like online meetings, that might be a little bit harder to do and to identify. But so, yeah, it can have benefits either way, right? But the biggest thing though is you need to make sure that you have something built because there was no default survey in that sense, right? There is something that gets sent out that shows stars and options like rank this from 1 to 5, right? And you can identify exactly how much you liked an event or a activity. Um, but that's not actually an event feedback request. That's just a ranking thing. That doesn't actually give you the ability to identify anything, get information off of it. And as you can see here, I put together some examples of things that we were obviously going to surveys and forums and later in the series itself. But yeah, I built some of these up, and some of these are question based, and so then there would be something I could actually select from this list and then send it out. Or you could have you could have some content down here like um, how much did you enjoy this? Like please send a response maybe to your email address for more details. And so then they can maybe directly be able to tell you how much they liked it or whatever. Um, but that kind of takes away our managing it out of your hands a little bit. And then so yeah, that's kind of so right now that's kind of where we're wrapping this up today. We've been over quite a lot. And it's been a very big thing. I'm going to just make a couple adjustments here to make sure that we can have this going. Um, maybe do this for the following or on the 7th or something like that. And so I'll just make sure to just make it so we have something that shows in the future. And let's do this around for the 7th potentially. Let's just do the 7th here. And yep, we'll just do the 7th at 2 to 3 and hit save like that. And then now we have it set up, and that's where we'll start back up for next time. All right. So thank you for attending, and we look forward to seeing the rest of this later and seeing you soon. All right. You have a great day.